This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about developers not having switched to dev kits yet, Metal Gear Solid Delta's atrocious performance, big Nintendo events coming soon, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 99. I am your host, the man who targets 60 frames per second in real life using PSSR and still drops into the 40s, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who tripped and broke his leg and landed on a sword, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's definitely been one of the busier weeks that I've had. I mean, work has just been hectic, and I had some more training yesterday with the thing I'm picking up for my coworker. That's completed. So now, starting next week, I'm going to be taking over completely up until like the third week of September. So hopefully all that goes well. But we'll definitely see what happens there. Saturday, some family members and we were moving some stuff out of my grandfather's house, just clearing up stuff out of there. We got a lot of work done. We definitely haven't taken care of everything, but we got a lot of work done. We'll just have to figure out when we're gonna go back and clean up more stuff out of there. But it was a fruitful day in that regard. Sunday, my church had its 7th anniversary, so
Nice.
that was pretty nice. Had a nice little lunch afterwards, and I helped out with some video interviews. I was asked the day before, saying, "Hey, could you help me out with something with a project?" I said, "Sure, yeah, I can help out." I thought I was gonna just do something like fetching or helping swap out some batteries or handling the gear and stuff, but I was also just reading out the questions for the interview, so that was also different from what I was expecting. But yeah, and I guess just because of everything that had happened, unfortunately, I didn't do too much gaming, but this coming week should definitely be better. Oh, and actually, one last thing I will also add, which is probably my favorite thing that I've done out of everything, is that I made some crab dip pizza. And this is something I haven't made in at least 4 to 5 years. But a month or so ago, I said to myself, I haven't made this in quite a long time. And, it's still that crab season. So I should go ahead and get some crab meat and make some crab dip pizza. So took care of that. And even though I know from previous experience to reduce the recipe, because the original recipe was for a restaurant, so obviously they're going to make a lot for multiple people,
Right.
So I made a half batch, and despite that having it's still enough that I was able to make at least 6 pizzas out of that. Yeah, so I mean, I was like, "Hey, you want some pizza?" So I mean, definitely has been. It definitely lasted. I'll say that much, but it definitely at least was good. Even though since I haven't made it in a long time, I didn't necessarily remember everything I would have to do with combining stuff, but it was good. It was good. I'll definitely have to do that again next summer.
So, what is on crab dip pizza?
Okay, the actual recipe itself is more so just a base, because the restaurant they made a base dip, and depending on how you fixed it, you could either have a crab dip, or you could have a buffalo chicken dip. So basically, you just have a base dip, which is cream cheese, sour cream, Asiago cheese, Parmesan, a little bit of Tabasco, and a little bit of garlic powder and some white pepper, and just mix all that up. And then for the crab dip, you just put some cheddar cheese on there. I put on a little bit of mozzarella, but you're gonna put some cheddar cheese on there. Sprinkle some crab meat if you want to use crab substitute, or if you want to actually use some pure lump crab meat, you can definitely do that. So that's what I was doing. And then since I'm from Maryland, you gotta add some Old Bay on there.
Of course.
And that's essentially it. And if you're going to use the buffalo chicken, you would have some grilled chicken and add some blue cheese and some hot sauce. So that's essentially it, though.
Okay. Well, it sounds pretty good. It sounds like very rich. The
Yes.
only thing that
Yes.
I would probably do differently with that is I would probably put like some tomato in there to help offset some of that richness. Like some chunks of tomato, I think would be really good with that. Maybe even like some green onion as well, at least as a garnish on top. I think would probably be pretty good. But I might have to try that because that does sound good. It's just I mean, like I've never heard of it before. I mean, when you said crab dip, it's like, okay, that sounds very much like an east, a northeast kind of thing to make. But yeah, I might have to try that. That does sound good. I think I'll try that next time I make a pizza, maybe. I don't know that I'll get real crab for it. More likely than not, I just use the imitation stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, imitation crab is still good. I mean, it's basically just fish. But yeah, still that does sound pretty good. I'll have to try that sometime. As for my week, let me think here. It's actually been kind of a busier week than I planned it to be, and in some ways not busy in a bad way. So let's see here. So I think it was Sunday. So Sunday. Oh yes, that's right. All right. So okay, let me back up a little bit. I don't remember if there was anything that really happened Thursday or Friday. There's probably something I'm just forgetting about, but Saturday, I spent the majority of the day playing games, but most of the games I was playing were specifically stuff I was recording for one of my next videos, which is about misconceptions of PC gaming. And one of the things I was trying to do with that was record a bunch of games without doing anything with the settings. Just starting them up for the first time, don't even touch the settings, and just demonstrate that the games are completely playable without going into the settings. So I'll talk about those games, what specifically I played, but because of that, I ended up spending a lot of time playing different games, ranging from playing something for like 15 minutes to playing for like 2 hours. But it was just, a lot of game time. But on Sunday, I got like my first week off from doing music in quite a while, so I just handled live stream and the soundboard and stuff. But my oldest son, who's turning 10 in November, wanted to sit with me, because usually I'll let one of the kids sit with me when I'm back there. And I thought, maybe it's time that I go ahead and try to train him on doing some of the stuff back here, because he's very technically minded anyway. So I just had him doing the PowerPoint slides for the songs and stuff. And I told him I would be monitoring him very closely because he gets distracted very easily, even though he's, very capable and smart and everything. And he did a great job. So it was like, yeah, he did a really, really good job. I was very pleasantly surprised, because it's like, I know he's capable of doing that. It's just, I also know how easily he gets distracted. And so it was kind of I just wasn't sure, but sure enough, he did a great job. So proud dad moment. Good to see that part paying off, and hopefully as time goes on, he can get trained on all the stuff back there, and be another person who can fill in there, especially, as he gets older and has more opportunities to serve. So, but yeah, so after church, we had like a longer meeting with all of the various people who are involved with the music. Just talk about some stuff that we, want to changes we want to make, and some stuff that we need to do better, and what we're doing well and that sort of thing. Just overall discussion. But the original plan was we would have, all the various people and their families would be, bringing their own lunches, and then we would have the meeting and we would eat, or, whichever order. We decided to do the meeting first because one of the guys needed to leave for a family lunch afterward. And so that ended up going way longer than we expected it to. Nobody ended up staying to eat, and we just, took our stuff back home, and then kids got a late lunch and stuff. But because of that, by the time evening rolled around, none of us were wanting to make any food. The kitchen was kind of a mess, and so my wife and I were discussing what we should do for dinner, and we ultimately settled on, even though we had already made some on Friday, ordering pizza. We just ordered a couple of single topping pizzas. The reason why I bring this up, though, is because so we had ordered 2 pizzas, but for some reason at the place where we ordered it from, they had 2 receipts print off, and so they made double our order. And so when I got there to go pick up the pizza, there was 4 pizzas, which were all labeled as for me. And I talked to them. I said, hey, you made double my order. I only ordered 2 pizzas. And, it was clearly a mistake, but it was basically, if I didn't take them, they would throw them away. So I got 2 free pizzas. And so I just see that as providence, because this week is going to be super busy, and we're not going to be able to do pizza till Saturday. And this way we can just pull the other 2 pizzas. We stuck them in the freezer, put them in bags, stuck them in the freezer. We can just pull them out, warm them up, and then we'll have our pizza for Saturday night all ready to go. So that is very nice. But beyond that, basically this week is going to be pretty busy because, of course, you and I are doing the podcast on Tuesday instead of Wednesday this week. And then Wednesday we have discipleship at church. And then Thursday we're going into Kansas City for my son's next doctor's appointment out there. So I have the day off from work, and we'll be gone most of the day. And then Friday we're having all of my family over for dinner, for a family get together, because it's basically the only day that we all have available for probably a couple months. So we're hosting at my house, and I have a bunch of cooking I need to do for that. We're doing Mexican. So I'm doing carnitas and a couple kinds of rice and a couple kinds of beans. And then one of my sisters, I'm also doing queso, or nacho cheese sauce. They call it queso out here, even though queso is literally just a Mexican word for cheese, but salsa con queso. Salsa with cheese. Or anyway, but cheese sauce. So I have some of that stuff I can do ahead of time. Some of it I'm going to have to wait till Friday to do. But yeah, so there's a lot there. Saturday, I'm not sure. I can't remember if we have anything specific scheduled, but I need to, at minimum, put together the thing for episode 100, get that all put together, and I have some potential ideas of how I can make it better, but I haven't really fully decided. Well, I have to mess around with stuff in order to figure it out, and I haven't had time to do so. And then Sunday we have church, and my wife and I will both be playing, and we also have family groups. in the evening where we're doing breakfast for dinner. So I'm at minimum going to do some bacon. Potentially also I'm either going to do sausage or sausage gravy. I haven't decided yet. Well, mostly I need to find out if there's going to be anyone who could bring biscuits, because if someone brings biscuits, then I can do sausage gravy. But if not, I'll probably just do homemade sausage in general. And I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting. But yeah, it's a busy week. So thankfully, despite all that, I was able to get in, like I said, good amount of gaming time over the weekend, even a little bit yesterday on Monday. And I don't anticipate I'll have much more game time throughout the rest of the week, but we'll see what happens. Oh yeah, I still need to mow the lawn at some point because I didn't end up doing that on Friday. So it's just kind of there's a lot to do. And a lot coming up. But anyway. Oh yeah, and one last thing is, so I'd been wanting to do this for a while. I got a desk, a foldable like treadmill thing just to go under my desk. I mean, it doesn't fit under my desk to where I can keep it there at all times because it's a little long, so then I can't like move my chair there because it's just in the way. It's also, a trip hazard, so I kind of have to just keep it under the bed when it's not being used. But yeah, so I grabbed that, and it's basically just because there are times when, especially after lunch, I'm just dragging and I need to be able to move around a little bit. Plus, also, that's going to be really helpful for my 24-hour streams because the exercise bike is fine, but the problem with it is that it takes a little more motivation to get on it because it's just the positioning is kind of awkward. Whereas walking on the treadmill, it works pretty well. I mean, I can't do anything like intensive, like playing a Souls game while doing that, but I can certainly, like I did one game yesterday that was not an action type game while on there, and it worked just fine. Oh, that reminds me, there is one last thing I forgot to mention. So I got an email from, I think the company is called QRD. I don't know where they're based. I think they might be UK based. But they asked me about doing a review of one of their products, which is a PS4 controller that has like Hall effect sticks, and it has back buttons, and it's supposed to work with like PS4 and PS5 and PC and Android and iPhone and stuff. And I said, sure, yeah, that sounds good. I'm definitely interested in checking that out. And they said that the way that they would be doing it is I would have to order it myself, and then after I publish a review, they would do a refund through PayPal. And I basically just said to them, okay, well, as long as you don't expect that I'm going to give that I'm guaranteed to give a positive review in exchange for a refund, I'm fine with that. I'll try out your product. If I like it, then I will review it positively, but I'm not going to lie about it. I'm going to be honest in my review, regardless of what it is. And it said, that's fine. We expect that. We hope you'll like it. But because I told them that I am primarily a PC gamer, they said, we actually have a different controller that's probably a better one for you to pick, which is an Xbox and PC controller. Also supposed to work with Switch and Android and stuff. And that one had to be ordered directly from their website rather than through Amazon. But, still has otherwise the same features, Hall effect sticks and back buttons. But the plus side is it actually has 4 back buttons, like the Steam Deck. So it's like, hey, even better. And, because of the fact that it's based on an Xbox controller instead of having the touchpad, it doesn't have that, which is perfectly fine. I don't really need that anyway, because really, apart from PlayStation games, I wouldn't really use it. So, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's everything.
Nice. So have you ordered it yet, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have like any idea of when it should be arriving?
They said 8 to 14 days. It hadn't shipped yet, as far as I saw. So I would guess probably a couple weeks. And I told them that I would want to have about a week with it before I worked on a review because I want to get a decent amount of time with it, test it out. But I mean, if I can finally have a good PC controller with back buttons that I can use on Souls likes, that would be perfect because that's what I've been looking for. So, and since Steam is refusing to make a Steam Deck like controller, well, snooze they lose.
Yeah, that's definitely great. I definitely can't wait to see your review on that. Regarding the treadmill, I mean, I think that's definitely good. But I thought about this when you mentioned it. What you could do is you could be like the people who mod special controls, like how they modded a DDR pad for Dark Souls. You could just try to mod your treadmill for that, and just try to beat Dark Souls completely with just a treadmill.
Yeah,
Just
I don't think it's quite that fancy of a treadmill, and on top of that, it doesn't. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have. You can't run on it. It's just designed really for walking. Um,
mm,
but yeah, that would be kind of funny. One thing that I definitely learned with it is that although I prefer manual mode because of the fact that it's easier to set the speed, set the walking speed, I realize that it's better to have automatic because if you set the walking speed, it will just keep going constantly with manual mode. If you set it on automatic when you're at like the front end towards the front of it, then it keeps going at that speed, but then if you move to the back of it, it stops, so that you don't have to worry about falling off necessarily. Even though, at least when I was doing it in manual mode, I lost my balance a couple times and ended up falling off and nearly hurting myself. Um, Nothing serious. It was more just like I lost my footing, and but then once I realized, oh, automatic works differently, that's probably what I'll use moving forward.
nice.
All right. Well, I saw no Expedition 33 this week, but I do want to hear about what you've been playing.
Yeah. So I went back because and played some Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, partially because several people on my friends list have been playing this game, and I realize I still need to get back to this game and finish it. I mean, granted, I still have to finish everything for Birth by Sleep, but I really have no motivation right now to go back and do like a lot of that stuff, especially for facing the super bosses right now, just because they're just, or at least the one that I've encountered so far, he's just nearly impossible right now. So I have to go back to that, probably level up some more, figure out what the right abilities to use are, just because. And I might even eventually, if it gets to be ridiculous, I might just have to find a cheat strategy, just because he can do a big combo that just wipes you out completely, and I found very little way to block or dodge that, so I definitely have to just think about that. But as far as Dream Drop Distance goes, not much. I didn't really do much. Last time I played the game was when I was still in Notre Dame, and I beat the boss there. But of course, as I mentioned before, unfortunately, I didn't save immediately after being the boss, and that's when I went into the drop that I died. And unfortunately, I had to start all over again because of the fact that I'm trying to go for the achievement that has you play through without using any continues. So that's why I sort of like rage quit at the time.
Yeah.
But this time I went through, beat the boss, and immediately saved after that. But I didn't really do too much besides that because I was just tired at that point. I just called it a night. But sort of most of what I've been playing besides that has been the Daemon X Machina Dark Cyan demo. And I think last week, sometime last week, they actually they announced that there was a demo coming, and so I said, I'll give it a shot. I'm not expecting too much out of it, but I want to see if there are any types of improvements from the first game.
Mm.
And I actually first started up on the Steam Deck, just out of mild curiosity. And the game runs at 60 frames per second at
Nice.
first.
Oh.
And it seems like it was doing well. Until you get to the overworld. Because unlike with the first Daemon X Machina, this one actually has an open world you can actually travel and explore. And it's neat. But as soon as you enter the open world, the frame rate just drops. I mean, it's there's a lot of, I mean, you can get 60 in the overworld, but the problem is it's just when you move around to different areas, it's just loading and there's a whole lot of stuttering going on, and the frame time is just bleh. So it's manageable, but it's far from ideal. So after a while of playing maybe a couple missions, I said I'm just going to go ahead and download it on my desktop, which is actually where you're seeing the gameplay now. I said I'll see how it goes there. Got 120 frames per second, and I'm just like, all right, cool, awesome, this is great. Until I went to the overworld, and then it just dropped into the into I think the 80s, essentially. And I mean, it jumped back up to around 109, 110, but again, when you're loading into different areas and moving around, the frame rate just gets a little lit. And of course, that could just be because of my CPU. I mean, it's only a Ryzen 5 5600X, so it's not like top of the line or anything. Like, it's just like budget CPU. But yeah, it definitely can hit a wall. Now, I will say, gameplay wise, I'm impressed on one end, but I'm also disappointed on another end. So the melee combat feels a whole lot more satisfying in this game than it did in the last game, which is great because I didn't use melee at all before because it just didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel good to use swords or any types of melee-based combat weapons. It feels better this time. And in fact, I primarily use swords this time around. Downside, ranged weapons are atrocious, or at least the ones that I found. Like, I picked up a machine gun, and the rate of fire is just so much slower. And in fact, I had to make sure that I actually picked up an automatic weapon because I thought there's no way that that I'm only shooting a bullet that's firing maybe 1.5 bullets per second. And because I'm remembering, all right, I picked up a machine gun in the last game. It's pretty standard fire rate. Nothing wrong there. And I checked again in the hangar, and I realized, nope, this is an automatic weapon. Why is the fire rate so slow? And so and I do realize that, at least in the last game, there are different rankings or different types of weapons. So even if you pick up a weapon that is, say, machine gun, like, even if that's just the title, it has different versions like B, F, and I think L, and depending on which one you have, the stats will differ based on what it is. So I understand that part of it, but unfortunately, it just didn't seem to make a difference right now, and so I just didn't like that at all. Additionally, there is a new sort of mechanic where you can stun enemies, and as a result, you can actually grab them when they're stunned, and you can either attack them with your right weapon or your left weapon, or you can throw them, which is pretty cool. And depending on how much health they have left, if you use an attack from your weapon, it can instantly finish them off. So I think that's pretty cool there. But I don't know. I I just think all in all, while there are a few things that are better this time around, it just definitely doesn't it doesn't fulfill the desires I had when I said, hey, there's a sequel coming out, here's what I want that would improve the game from the first one. So I feel like that there's a bit of a step backwards in that regard. And I guess regarding the story from what I've seen, it's not anything to write home about, but I would say it definitely seems to be better as far as the pacing goes compared with the first game. Because I mean, the first game, at the very beginning, you're just thrown. There's a lot of information thrown at you. It's like you've got 5 different factions, and here's all the different characters from each faction, and it's like, whoa, wait, hold on, slow down. Like, I'm supposed to remember all these factions, all these characters right off the bat. Here, it at least the pacing seems to be a whole lot better, and unlike the first game where you're essentially just a blank slate, your character actually does seem to have some sort of agency, which is nice. I mean, I think they cut or reduce the number of voices you can choose from, but as a result, all your dialogue is actually fully voice acted. So it's not like you select a response and the character just has the text pop up on the screen and there's no answer. So I do like that aspect of it. But yeah, so I mean, like, it's better, but it's not something so far that I would say it's amazing or anything like that. But all in all, I don't know how I feel about the game. Like, before, I was going to say, when I heard that there was a sequel, I'll be cautious. I'll look and see about getting it. When they announced the game was going to be $70, I was like, ooh, no way. And then when they announced the demo, I said, I'll see. Maybe I'll get it on a discount. But after playing the game, I'm just like, I don't know. Even if I got it on a discount for, say, $40, I'm not certain if I would get it, just because some of the mechanics just feel like a step backwards to the point where it's not really enjoyable that much anymore. So I don't know. I probably might not get the game when it fully releases, but it'll depend. I might play the demo some more because I haven't completed the demo yet. There's still some content in there, and I think some more missions, but just based off of what I've played right now, it's a no from me.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that is everything from me.
All right, so first of all, going with Kingdom Hearts. So, out of curiosity, is the boss that you're talking about in Birth by Sleep, is that Vanitas that you're having to face as the super boss, or something else?
Vanitas, I beat him at least with Ven. Right now, the one I'm currently stuck on is Unknown, or at least I can't remember if that's his name, but I know it's Future Xehanort, essentially.
Oh. Okay.
And basically the biggest problem is the fact that he teleports and has a lot of clones that help him out, and that's like the biggest thing that has been an issue with me so far.
Gotcha.
And of course, I have to beat him 3 times with each character, which is just when each character has a different playstyle, that changes the strategies completely.
All right. And then regarding Daemon X Machina, so I definitely like hearing that at least the melee attacks feel better. But like I just remember from trying out the demo of the original one on the Switch that the melee attacks didn't feel good. The guns felt like pea shooters, and from what it sounds like, it might not be much different in this one. Just kind of just now it's open world. But yeah, that's kind of disappointing. I guess, I mean, at least you have the demo you can reference and determine whether or not it's going to be worth making the purchase later on. But I feel like there was something else you said about that, but because of getting distracted by the other thing I needed to take care of, I forgot if there was some other thought I had on that. Probably what will happen is when I'm listening back to edit tomorrow, I'll send you a message about whatever question it was that I had, because I don't remember right now. So, all right. Well, getting into the games that I played. So, um, first of all, I'm going to because there was a lot. There was a bunch of different games that I tested. Um, and there's I'm gonna group four of them together, and then I'll talk about some of the individual ones independently. So first of all, there was the set of four games that I have playing footage for here. So there was uh, Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered. I should mention that half half the games I played were GOG and the other half were Steam games. So there was Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered, which I specifically just tested out the first Tomb Raider, which has the glorious original PS1 cutscenes that are 15 frames per second, extremely blurry, and just low polygon cutscenes. And then when you get to the actual gameplay, um, you can, of course, swap between the two different graphical styles, but um, I mean, just by pressing basically the equivalent of the start button. Um, but of course, it obviously looks a heck of a lot better. The funny thing about it, though, is that when I started it up, I didn't think to check to make sure the controls would be set to modern controls over the classic controls by default. And so it was set to classic controls, which are tank controls and buttons that just don't feel natural at all for, people who are used to how modern games play. And so I was just when it shows the footage here of me playing initially is rough because I have no idea how to play, and of course there's no tutorials or anything. So I'm just like, what? I mean, once I changed the controls, I was definitely having a much easier time, but it definitely feels like a PS1 game in terms of how it controls. Even I mean, it feels a lot better with the modern controls, but it's still like just certain aspects of it, like the lack of ability to easily target enemies and that sort of thing, just feels very dated. But then another GOG title I tested out was Mad Max, and this I guess I should also mention real quickly with Tomb Raider, apart from the cutscenes which are 15 frames per second, the main game runs at 240 all the time. As default settings, I think I might have checked the settings after the fact, and I think it was maxed out anyway, even with the default settings. But with Mad Max, default settings, I was getting 120 to 180 frames per second. Um, I think I can't remember if I changed the settings after that just to optimize it to my liking more. Getting rid of um, motion blur and that sort of thing. But anyway, the little bit that I played, which is basically just like the very first mission of the game, uh, played well. Like it was the only thing that was weird about it is that the jump button is mapped to the left trigger, which is weird because I've never played a game that I can think of that has the jump button has jump matched uh, mapped to the left trigger. So that was kind of weird. Um, some one there's a couple others that I don't have footage recorded, or at least I don't have any footage being displayed here because I didn't really play them. One of those was Roller Coaster Tycoon Deluxe, which I've actually had for a number of years. That one, because of it being an old game, I mean, from the um, late 90s, it does not have any sort of modern resolutions. The maximum it goes up to, I think, is 1024 by 768, I believe, is the maximum it goes up to. It's only 4:3 aspect ratio. So there may be like mods to get it above that, but I didn't find any on Nexus mods. And it's weird because I could have sworn that when I played it before, I was able to get a higher resolution than that, but I'm not sure what, if anything, I would need to do to change that. So anyway, I literally just started it up just to see, what would happen with default settings. And I mean, it worked, but because it's an older game, it's really not designed to actually work well with modern configurations. Apart from the fact that it'll launch easily. And you can still play it, but it's just mouse and keyboard. That's the only control method available. So yeah, but then the last one that I tried with GOG, or well, no, I guess it's not the last GOG, but the other one that I tried that I didn't record footage for because I literally couldn't get it working was the Elder Scrolls Arena, the very first Elder Scrolls game from 1994, which has to run through DOSBox, and because of the fact that the instructions were not as straightforward as I was hoping they would be, it was not something that just started up right away. It was definitely an example of, okay, this is the kind of thing that I think that a lot of console gamers think that this is how PC games work across the board, when in reality it's just like really old ones like this. So it was, I couldn't even get the game running. But then another game that the next two games that I'll talk about are both just Steam games that I have. One is Uncharted 4, which I had not yet booted up since I got it on PC, because I actually pre-ordered and got that right at launch, but I just didn't get around to playing it because I was trying to finish up. I mean, I was working on getting all the platinum trophies for all the previous Uncharted games on PS4. And so I ended up just this is my first time booting it up. Default settings, I was getting anywhere from 90 to 110 frames per second the whole time. Looked amazing, running at 1440p and everything. I don't think I ever did anything with the settings to, make them more to my liking, like getting rid of film grain and motion blur and all that on this one. But it is very much one where it just plays great. The only thing that I really wanted to do with it that didn't seem to be an option was adding gyro aiming, and since I started the game on the highest difficulty, that would have been very helpful. But I only had, it's like only the very, very beginning of the game where you have that, and then it's basically just kind of like an intro thing where it teaches you the controls, and then after that it goes into a flashback thing where you have more non action-y bits. But anyway, so yeah, runs super well, plays great, default settings. Then I finally booted up Hogwarts Legacy, and this is another one where default settings, getting locked 60 frames per second, looked great, controls really well. Seems like it's a pretty fun game. The little bit of combat I got to do was quite good. I very much liked it. I basically just played long enough to where I barely got past the Hogwarts Legacy title card, because a lot of games will do that nowadays, where you'll have like the whole prologue where you're learning the mechanics, the basics of the game before they actually show you the title card. So it was about 45 minutes to an hour that I played on that one. I should mention also Uncharted 4 was about an hour. I basically just played through the prologue, or most of the prologue anyway. And so, yeah, but Hogwarts Legacy, like I said, looks and runs really well. That one I did after I had gotten through that point. Modify settings. Basically, I just got rid of any upscaling it was using, and then I tried a couple different things just out of curiosity's sake. Like initially, I tried turning on all ray tracing stuff on the maximum, and then the frame rate dropped quite a bit. But the initial thing was also just uncapping the frame rate, because it was capped at 60, and then I uncapped it, and it was getting up into the 80s and 90s pretty easily, but looking a lot. I mean, it already looked good on default settings. It looked even better without, though. So there was that. But then I got into a few other games that are definitely worth noting. So first of all, this is a GOG game, Dishonored. I can't remember I think it's just Dishonored Definitive Edition, but So I have never played through Dishonored. I basically have only ever gone through, I think, 2 or 3 missions in the game on the Steam version. But I booted this up, default settings, was getting 120 to 130 frames per second. Looks good, especially considering it's a game that came out back in 2012, because the art style just really works well for this older game. Played really well. I was definitely enjoying what I played. When I decided to go back and check the settings, I think basically everything was already set at maximum, but then I, did my usual thing, turn off motion blur and film grain and that sort of thing. Bumped up the resolution, which was set at 1080p, up to 1440p, and then that was basically what I did. There wasn't really a whole lot I had to do with settings to get it up to the maximum of what I wanted, because otherwise it was just default 1080p. But yeah, looks and runs really well. Once again, another game, an older game that ran without doing anything with settings, so worked beautifully. But then I got into 2 games that I'd been really wanting to check out, and this was just like the perfect excuse. So the first one was Another Crab's Treasure. So I played this, I tested this first on my desktop. I later tested it on Steam Deck as well. But on my desktop, default settings, didn't touch the settings at all, 120 frames per second right off the bat. Looking great, running great. I think after I had done all of my initial stuff with it, I went back and I checked the settings, and I don't think I really had to do much of anything with settings. I think everything was basically already correct. I might have had to turn off motion blur or something, but honestly, I don't even remember if I did anything with that. It's actually very possible that I just left it alone. I honestly don't remember. But yeah, it looks great, it runs great, and it's fun and it's funny. It has some very good humor. Definitely very much a breath of fresh air when it comes to Souls-likes, as I expected it would be. And if I wasn't in the middle of other Souls-likes, I would probably play this one because it's pretty fantastic. But then when I booted it up on the Steam Deck, I had to turn most of the settings down to low, the ones that weren't already there. And then I ended up locking the frame rate at, I think, 40 or 45 FPS because it wasn't quite maintaining 60. And, it played well enough. I mean, I didn't play much on the Steam Deck, but it still was pretty fun. And, it worked well enough. I was pretty happy with the performance. I could definitely see myself playing it, at least some there. Even though, of course, playing it on the desktop is way better because of that 120 frames per second. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic on both counts. And I guess I will say, just with that game, the only point I've gotten to so far is I basically just played a little bit past beating the first boss. And that was really the extent of what I did on that front. I guess a couple things I can note about the gameplay itself. So, for one, you don't get different weapons, you just get different shells, which initially you start off, you don't have a shell. The first shell you can pick up is a soda can. And as those shells take damage, you have to replace them, basically. I think I can't remember if there's parrying or not. I think there's some kind of parrying mechanic, but you can also just, dodge and that sort of thing. One thing that's kind of nice about the healing, at least, is that instead of it just being like Estus flasks where you have to refill them, by doing your bonfire thing, you can instead. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to turn off. Put that on Do Not Disturb. you can pick up healing items in the world as well to refill some of those. I mean, you don't, they're not like super plentiful, but you'll find spots where you'll see, like you can pick up one or two of that particular healing item at a time and utilize that. So that's pretty nifty. But yeah, I really like what I played. I just know that because I was still playing Sekiro, that when I go back to a Souls game, it's probably going to be Sekiro before I start playing things like Another Crab's Treasure or the other Souls like that I tried out, which is Lies of P. So Lies of P default settings on my desktop was getting locked 60 frames per second. Game was looking good. It was, I was very pleased with the performance. Even though, of course, I wanted higher than 60, I knew that it was just a frame cap that was set by default, which is perfectly fine. I mean, very playable, perfectly fine for, default settings. But I played, at least on Saturday, I played up through the first boss and maybe even a little bit past that. And what I ended up doing was after I gave the first boss a couple of attempts, had a good amount of footage recorded, doing with default settings, I checked the settings and, of course, first got rid of the frame rate cap and then got rid of the FSR usage and turned off film grain and motion blur, that sort of thing. And with everything still maxed out, otherwise 1440p native, no upscaling, I was getting, while OBS was running, 80 to 90 frames per second. With OBS, without OBS, it was more in the 100 plus range was pretty average. Or actually, I guess it was more like, it's like 80 to 90 with OBS running and recording, and then without OBS on, it was like 90 to 100. It was pretty average. So, it definitely made a difference, and of course, it ended up looking better as well. But very, very satisfied with that. I really like this game, what I played so far. Because of the fact that I still wanted to play a bit more, I did play some more, and I got through one that's like, I don't think it counts as a proper boss. It's more like technically a mini boss, but it has a long health bar too. So I did do that, but then then I got through another proper boss with a summon in tow, and more just because it was an option. I was like, sure, I'll try it out, see what happens, and then ended up just taking it down on my first try because of that. But I'm very pleased with it. I really like the way it plays. It's very much you essentially pick a build at the beginning. You go with either strength, dexterity, or I can't remember what the third option is. It might just be more of a balanced one. But I went with strength because that's usually what I go for. And it was kind of nice. So I guess there was a collaboration related to Wolong Fallen Dynasty. And so they added for free a halberd, or not halberd, gosh, I can't remember what kind of weapon it's called. But it's like one of those, it's like a spear, but it basically just has a blade at the end. I can't remember what kind of weapon that's called. But anyway, that's something they added as a free thing for the game. So I had that from the very beginning of the game. Even though that collaboration was a while after the game came out. And that weapon, I guess from what I've heard, it's pretty overpowered. And the bit that I used it, I was like, yeah, this does feel good, because it's like, it's strong, and it's basically counts as a great sword, essentially. And yeah, but I mean, it's not like so overpowered to where anybody could easily take out every enemy with it, but it's also a little bit overpowered. And you can also, after you get to a certain point, you can start customizing weapons. Like you can give them specific handles, and then, like a blade or blunt or whatever attachment to it to kind of, make it give it unique things like um, give an electrical shock, for example, to your sword, which is one of the ones that I did later on, and that sort of thing. I also tried it out on the Steam Deck, and one of the footage here that's playing, the leftmost footage is Steam Deck footage. The middle is the default settings, and then the right is the most optimized settings, or at least optimized according to my taste, without FSR or anything else. But yeah, Steam Deck, basically the best way I could do it was doing 45 as my cap. 60 was not really consistent enough to be worth doing. I may try 60 again later on, but I feel like even when I was trying to do 60, it was still just not consistent enough to where it was worth doing. Like, Sekiro's a lot more consistent than this on the 60 side, so. But either way, I mean, I could definitely see myself playing it a decent amount on the Steam Deck. So there's a decent chance I'll end up doing that whenever I really play it. But I'm not like actually playing it right now. It's basically just I played a bit on Saturday, and then I think I played a little bit on Sunday, and I didn't play after that. But it's just, I felt like playing it a bit, and I was having a good time with it, and I wanted to get some more footage. Unfortunately, the last bit of footage, I forgot that I had HDR turned on when I recorded it, and so, of course, the footage was super washed out. But the footage I have here was all recorded through OBS, and there was no HDR on, so it all looks just fine. But one thing that is kind of funny, though, is that with the default settings, my GPU percentage was at like 40 to 45%. When I put it on native resolution, it bumped up to 82%. So it's like, yeah, using my GPU considerably more once I did that. Yeah. So I can't remember if I saw what the actual difference was with like Hogwarts Legacy when I did it. I mean, I know it was definitely higher once I turned off the upscaling, but yeah. I guess then there's just two more things that I played that were not for the video at all, just playing in general. So I played some more Gotham Knights. I ended up basically, since I had already gotten the glider for Batgirl, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do the same for the other three characters. Do enough to get them their gliders. So Nightwing, Robin, and Red Hood. Red Hood, I haven't gotten his yet, because I just haven't yet. He definitely is like, he's the stronger, much slower character that of course has guns, and so he's a little harder for me to get used to. There are some things that are nice about him over the others, but he's definitely my least favorite so far. That may change after I get his whatever glider thing he has, but so far he's definitely my least favorite. Robin is really good. Probably he's my second favorite, having the bow staff, and then he can actually do silent takedowns on the bigger enemies, which he's the only character that can do that. Nightwing would come right after that, and he's probably the most balanced, I guess you could say, maybe in many ways, but I think once I actually start using his glider, I'll have a better idea of where he and Batgirl kind of fit in general. But right now he's like my third favorite, and but I got both his and Robin's gliders, and I haven't tested them out at all yet, because I basically just, once I got it, then I moved on to the next character and started working on theirs. But yeah, so I played a tiny bit on Steam Deck. I don't have any footage recorded from there. I based all the footage I have recorded here. Nightwing was on my desktop, and then the other two were on my laptop. And so that's just kind of been where I've been with that. The last game I played was Persona 3 Reload, and footage here is just from Steam Deck. I got past the next of the major bosses and am in, I think, late October for the game now, something like that. I can't remember the exact date where I'm at, but I'm, working my way through that. I mean, it's hard to say exactly how much longer it's going to take for me to finish the game just because of how little game time I'm going to have this week. But I at least am still enjoying myself. I play both on the Steam Deck and on my desktop. And my desktop, that's what I was playing while I was on the walking treadmill yesterday. That worked out pretty nicely because, I mean, I was not in, even if I had gone into combat, because it's all completely turn-based and there's no timing that I have to worry about, it was very easy to just press buttons and work my way through social stuff and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think that's everything. I haven't played anything else. It's just been those things, and I know that probably the rest of the week I'm not going to get much of any game time, so...
All right. So I've got several different questions. I guess going in order. So with Roller Coaster Tycoon, you were playing that through GOG or Steam?
GOG.
Okay. Huh. All right.
I mean, it wasn't through Galaxy. It was just the offline launcher.
Ah. Okay.
If I had done it through Galaxy, I haven't even thought about that. But that might give me more options.
Yeah.
But yeah, the offline installer at least didn't have any of those options.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was just say, using it through Galaxy, they probably might have, if there is like a patch for high resolutions, then they probably have bundled it in there. So that way, if you download it through there, then you would have like whatever patches available to improve the resolution. And I guess also, to a degree, I'm wondering if the same would apply to Elder Scrolls Arena or not. Because I can't...
Maybe.
Well, no. I don't know. Because I don't know if I'm also getting this confused with the Daggerfall Unity version. That could be something I'm thinking about, because I know that they remade... There was a remake of Daggerfall in Unity, so that way people wouldn't have to use DOSBox. So that's probably what I'm thinking about. So you might still have to use DOSBox if you ran it through Galaxy, but that could be also something to try and see if that would help out or not. I don't know.
Maybe.
So with another Crab's Treasure, so just the way you were describing things, with regarding how you pick up shells throughout the game, does each shell have its own type of, I guess, attributes or abilities that are unique to it? Okay. So I guess to a degree it's kind of like, or at least the closest description I can think of would be like with Mortal Shell, where how you have different shells that based on the combat. And so I guess also as a follow-up question, that would be, you said that you can lose your shell and you keep going. So if you lose your shell, you can you're still alive until you can get another shell, or is it as soon as you lose your shell, that's when you actually really start taking damage completely?
Yes and no, because depending on how good your shell is determines on whether you take much of any damage while it's equipped. But it does block a lot of the damage. I mean, so far the only shell I've been able to find is soda cans. They haven't had, nothing else has been available just yet. But yeah.
Nice. So I guess I don't mean to make you like choose between these two, but which one would you say you would be most, or which would you say you want to play the most out of these two if you had to be sidetracked by the other Souls games? Would you choose Another Crab's Treasure, or do you choose Lies of P?
Probably Crab. Because mostly just because it's so different. Because Lies of P reminds me a lot of Bloodborne. Um, and I really like it. But Crab is just very it's very much a breath of fresh air. You know, it's just so much different in terms of like its um aesthetic and the sense of humor and everything involved with it. And I don't know, I guess it's just, being colorful and bright, and it's just kind of it's kind of nice to have something that's just different. But yeah.
Hmm. Guess we can call it Light Souls then.
Yeah.
Um. Oh yeah, and so going and actually that's tying into that with Lies of P, the collaboration weapon is that. Well, I mean, I know you said that it's been out for a while. Is that a timed thing, or is that just like you can claim
No,
whenever?
it's
To your
it's just
knowledge.
basically like when the game originally came out, that collaboration didn't exist, and so it wasn't available. But now, as soon as you start up the game, you'll get that weapon by default, regardless. I think it's just a free thing that's included. Period. It's not a timed thing, because I mean, Wolong came out, I think, sometime last year, maybe longer. I can't remember because I don't remember when Liza P came out. I guess that might have been last year, but um, yeah, it came out sometime after the game released, but it's still just like it shows up automatically in your inventory right when you start up the game, or at least right after you pick
Okay,
up your first weapon.
well, that's definitely good to know then, because I was gonna say if it was still timed, I would go ahead and boot up the game just so I can claim that. But since I have time, then
I mean, you could
I
double
don't
check
necessarily.
because I might be wrong on that front, but I'm pretty sure it's just you get it. And it's even possible that maybe depending on which type of weapon you choose, you might get a different weapon. It may just be I got that one weapon because I chose the strength emphasis, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Definitely make a note about that though. Oh. Regarding the Tomb Raider games, so
Mhm.
just out of curiosity, have you played any of the older games before,
No.
or is this, I guess you could say, your first delving into?
Yeah, this is my first old school Tomb Raider game. I've only ever played the three newest games from the trilogy.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you also didn't play Anniversary, that I guess
No.
technically remake. Okay. Um. Yeah, I think that's. I think those are all the questions that I had. Good stuff.
Indeed. Okay. Well, I guess if there's nothing else, let's get into the news. So there's not a whole lot of stories since we last talked, at least nothing really big, but there are a couple topics that I think are worth discussing. One of those first ones, which is, I guess you could say in a sense near and dear to me, is regarding Metal Gear Solid Delta, which has terrible performance across every single platform, even the PS5 Pro. And it's, in fact, actually, it performs and in many cases looks worse on the PS5 Pro than it does on the base PS5, which is sad because it shouldn't. There's no
Yeah.
reason it should, except it's obviously a developer issue. Um, but like, I was checking out Destin Legary's review, and he played the game on PC, and his is with a 4090. Now his CPU is not as good as mine, but with a 4090, 1440p with most of his settings maxed out, he was getting 60 frames per second near locked. But that's with a 4090. And the consoles, I think in general the highest it goes up to, I think it can get as high as like maybe 1500p. I think on in quality mode on the PS5, but most of the time it's sub 1080p on every single platform in every single setting. Well, I should say on all the consoles. On PC, it obviously varies a lot depending on what kind of hardware you have. But yeah, it's really bad, and um, I will have more to say about that in general. But I do want to note on the flip side, we got some uh, information on the remaster of Gears of War Reloaded, that I think also came out today. Because I guess MGS Delta is early access. If you bought the digital deluxe version, it's early access. Came out today, and then I think it comes out on Thursday for everybody else. But the Gears of War Reloaded one, I've only looked at how it does on the Steam Deck, but on the Steam Deck, it's getting basically a near locked 60 frames per second with high settings. And if you lower the settings, of course, you can get better. If you use FSR, you can get above 60 frames per second. And that's quite the difference there. Now, I haven't looked at how it does on PC. And yes, this is a remaster of an Xbox 360 game as opposed to a Unreal Engine 5 game. However, it still is pretty embarrassing, the difference there, because the Gears of War remaster does look good. Despite being, technically an old game with new skins on top of it. But that all being said, before I get into my more in-depth thoughts on this, what are your thoughts?
It's definitely a real shame and a disappointment that this is happening. I mean, there's really no excuse for this. There's no excuse why there's such poor optimization for any platform. For PC, the fact that you need a 4090 just to get 60 frames per second.
At
The
1440p.
fact that
Not even
1440p
4K.
at that, not even 4K. And the fact that the fact that a base PS5 looks better than a PS5 Pro,
And runs
like
better.
that, it runs better. Like, where's the logic in that? I mean, it's just a mess. And I mean, I don't know if it's, Unreal Engine 5, or I mean, it's probably mostly just a matter of Konami not doing everything they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could also just be a combination of the two as well, like especially if Konami hasn't worked along with, or I mean, granted, it's probably their first time working with Unreal Engine 5 at that, so that's probably not a good combination there. And it also makes me wonder, why not just use the Fox engine? I mean, they still have it. That's still, legally theirs. So it's not like they said, oh man, Kojima left and he took the Fox engine with them. Can't use that anymore. No, they've had the thing. So, I mean, you can still do stuff and make it look good. I mean, I don't think that the game wouldn't, I don't think there's a problem with using it. So why not go ahead and just make the remake in Fox Engine? Or if they were going to try to make a revamped version, like a Fox Engine 2.0, why not do that? But instead, they went ahead and did this, which is a shame. And, also it has that premium price tag of $70, which is like, you're paying for that. Oh, lovely. And on one hand, it's weird why I really don't get why this is a thing, especially for single player games. But why do you have early access for this game when it's coming out several days later? Is beyond me. And I mean, I for anyone who pre-ordered the game for early access, on one hand, I feel kind of bad because you're buying a product that is coming out and we're seeing how unoptimized it is. But on the other hand, it's like, well, you paid extra to get this, so I don't know if I should completely feel sorry on that end. But the game just really needed more time to cook in the oven. like this game obviously was not ready, and hopefully Konami is going to put in the effort to get this game running the way it should be running shortly, to the point where the PS5 Pro is running this game at least at 60 frames per second, maybe at like 1440p. I would hope that it can do that, but hopefully it can do that. PC, you should definitely be able to run this thing on running at 1440p at 60 fps on maybe something akin to, okay, if I want to say maybe like a 3070 Ti, maybe like something like that, maybe say, okay, we need enough power on that end. But to need a 4090 just to hit 60 fps, that is ridiculous. I mean, there's only one that would mean that if you want to run this game at any sort of high resolution, you would need to have a 5090 in order to do that, because that's the only other GPU that would be more powerful than a 4090 is a 5090. So it's like anything below that is essentially garbage, because it's not able to do that. So Konami has a whole lot of work to do on that, and yeah, it's definitely a shame. And hopefully people are just not are going to see how the performance is going and just say, all right, we're not going to touch this until you fix this, Konami, because you should not be charging us this much money to get such a subpar experience. And I mean, it definitely could be better, because it definitely looked great from what we've seen, but the final product is just not where it needs to be. But yeah, that is essentially everything that I have.
Well, for anyone who's listened for a while, I was very excited about this because I love Metal Gear Solid 3. It is my favorite Metal Gear game, or at least Metal Gear Solid, because I haven't played the other Metal Gear games, but I had it pre-ordered. I mean, like, the second it became available for pre-order on Green Man Gaming, I pre-ordered it, and pre-ordered the deluxe edition, got my 25% off. But after seeing how it was, I was going back and forth all weekend, and then finally yesterday I just canceled my pre-order. Got a refund. I decided to do store credit because I figured, Green Man Gaming, I'll use it there. I mean, it's like I might as well just keep the credit there because it's going to get used one way or another. But yeah, like, it's very possible. I mean, especially considering, well, I guess I should mention a couple things. For one, I believe the game is capped at 60 frames per second, so it's possible that you might actually be able to get higher than that with a 4090, and that it was just capped there. In which case, of course, then there's a potential that even with my 2080 Ti, I might still be able to get 60 frames per second, even if I had to turn down a couple settings. However, to me, that's not good enough. I mean, the way I see it is that there is no reason why this game can't be better optimized. There just isn't. Especially with how bad it is on consoles. That's honestly the thing that surprises me the most, because usually these things, they'll make special effort to make them more optimized, at least at launch on consoles. Like, optimized enough to where at least you're getting 60 frames per second most of the time. But the way that it looks from everything I've seen of the footage from PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X and S, I mean, like, the Series S, of course, only does 30 frames per second. It won't do above that, which isn't surprising. That's not necessarily a huge deal considering what it is, even though I still think it should be 60. But the fact that the Series X, the PS5, the PS5 Pro are not doing any better than that. They're running most of the time below 1080p. And I mean, and it's mostly dynamic resolution as well with that. So it's like the resolution's all over the place. It's lower than it should be. It's running poorly. I mean, there's no excuse for this except that it's simply they just didn't do their jobs. They did a lazy port. I know that there were a bunch of issues with like the Master Collection when it first came out too. What was that, 2023? And so it's not terribly surprising. And of course, on top of that, the fact that it's running in Unreal Engine 5. I don't know if it uses any sort of ray tracing. Even if it does, I mean, on consoles, it's obviously not going to be like as good as what you get on PC. Um, oh, the other thing I forgot to mention with Destin's review is that he also, in addition to running it on a 4090 and it apparently being capped at 60 frames per second, he also was running it at max settings. So with his, it's like, okay, it's very possible if I adjusted settings, I'd be able to get more 60 with my card. However, like I said, I'm just not okay with where it is. I think it needs to be better than it is. Especially because I've played Metal Gear Solid 3 times in 1 year. And even though it's been a couple of years since then, I'm not so anxious to play to where I can't wait on this. And as much as like there's part of me that has a bit of FOMO because I do really love the game and I have been looking forward to it, I also just I have been way too lenient with these companies in the past, and this is one situation where I needed to put my foot down, especially because like I'm not going to, mention any names or anything or, that sort of thing, but I saw someone comment that, about how they were getting FOMO, like they were originally going to wait and then they were like really tempted to buy it. And I didn't respond to them only because of the fact that they're the kind of person I know that just is happy to accept anything that they're given. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing in general, when it comes to these games, the problem is the more you accept these bad things, the more they're going to keep getting away with it. You have to put your foot down at a certain point. And when you just accept everything because you're a console exclusive person and you don't have any problem with them giving you a subpar product, they're going to keep giving you subpar products. And as much as I wanted to play this game, the fact that I had this game pre-ordered months and months ago, I had to speak with my wallet and say, I'm not going to play this game. When they fix the game and it's 50% off or more, then I will consider buying it. But even then I might wait. I mean, well, it has to be like fixed. Like to the point where it's running the way it's supposed to. In fact, I think it should be running the way it's supposed to on consoles too. And that may even be a point for me. I mean, obviously PC is the most important because that's where I would be playing it, but I just feel like Konami needs to learn a lesson. And while I'm just one person and I may not make any difference, I also know that if everybody has the attitude I'm not going to make a difference, then nobody's going to make a difference. And if more people just have the attitude, it doesn't matter if I make a difference, I'm speaking with my wallet, then we would have more change. And hopefully have more games come out actually complete instead of half done. And I mean, everything else I've heard about the game, it's great. It's a faithful recreation of the original game. It looks amazing. Everything that was great about the original game is still there. But it's that the performance should not be this way for a game in 2025. It just shouldn't be. There's no excuse for that, especially on PC. But even on consoles, I think that realistically, if they worked harder to optimize the games, they could get it 60 frames per second on all consoles. Series S, I can understand a little bit more because it is weaker. However, I still think that if they optimized it properly, if they had built it like starting with the Series S, optimizing it for that, they could have had it better on every other console and PC from there. But, they don't do it that way. They did it the laziest way possible to where it's like, oh yes, it looks great and everything. It's a faithful recreation. They're adding additional modes including modes that have only existed in like one or two versions of Metal Gear Solid 3, and that's all well and good, but if they're not going to optimize it before they release it, they're not getting my money yet. They're going to have to wait. So, On the flip side, I will say with Gears of War Reloaded, if it goes up on Green Man Gaming, I may end up buying it. Because, I mean, the fact that it runs that well on Steam Deck is beautiful. It's a game I've been interested in playing for a long time anyway. And while I definitely understand people saying that it should have been the trilogy, at the same time, I also want to support examples of games that actually are properly optimized. And that game seems to be properly optimized, even on the Series S. So we'll see if it. I mean, right last I checked, it wasn't up on GMG. So if it's not there, let's wait. So I can use my credit, but otherwise, I'll hang on to my credit until there's something worth grabbing. Probably, a newer game that I want to grab. Of course, it would be great if we got hey, tomorrow or, in a couple weeks, Sony announces the next PC port and it's out today, shadow dropped, Ooh, Gravity Rush Remastered 1 and 2. Shadow dropped, yay. Bloodborne Remastered. Be instant purchase.
Yep.
Their site's going to crash with all the people buying it. Steam's going to crash with all the people buying it. But yeah, that's everything I have.
One thing I want to add, because I thought about this, it's just regarding optimization. It's really funny how, I mean, granted, he wasn't the only one working on this game, but with Kojima, you take Death Stranding. Now, the PC version of it runs and looks beautiful, and you can get 120 plus frames in that game. And out of curiosity, I was just looking at see how it performed, how Death Stranding 2 performed on the PS5 Pro. While of course there are different, two different game modes you can choose depending on how you want to experience the game. You can get Death Stranding 2 to run at 60 frames per second on the PS5 Pro. So why couldn't Konami do the same thing and get Metal Gear Solid running at 60 FPS on the PS5 Pro? So, I mean, I think it's definitely that mentality of, big corporation wanting to put in or rather not wanting to put in the time to get the game polished as best as it should be, versus visionary who wants to get the game running as best as possible on the system. So it's definitely that contrast in mindset, which shows how, when Kojima left Konami, he definitely took a lot of the talent with him in that aspect. So yeah, that I just wanted to add that in there.
Indeed. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our next topic. So you want to talk about this whole situation with the Switch 2 dev kits?
Yes. So, recently, and I think we might have talked about this here or there a couple times, but about how Switch devs didn't receive dev kits up to the release of the Switch 2. However, according to this this article from Insider Gaming, in an episode of Digital Foundry's Direct Weekly, John Linneman and Oliver Mackenzie spoke with different developers at Gamescom this past week. And while they didn't specify which devs didn't receive them, they did say that there were a number of developers who did not receive, including some AAA studios, who did not receive Switch 2 dev kits. An exact quote here: Nintendo seems to be almost discouraging Switch 2 development to some degree, where I've spoken with plenty of developers where they were either told that their game, that they should just ship it on Switch 1 and rely on backwards compatibility. There's a lot of developers that are unable to get Switch 2 dev kits. We talked to a lot of devs at the Gamescom this year, and so many of them said the same things. They want to ship on Switch 2. They would love to do Switch 2 versions. They just can't get the hardware. It's really difficult right now. And also was the additional quote saying that through the grapevine, some weird exclusions with some big developers were struggling to get kits for games, and there were weird inclusions as well. Like some indies were included, which is nice to see. But like there's that campfire game, the kind of camera campfire game, and they're getting kits, and some big developers on the other hand who developed like AAA stuff aren't necessarily in the pipeline there for kits. They didn't receive any either. So again, while we don't necessarily know which ones received dev kits or which ones didn't, it probably makes some sense on some things, and I definitely have quite a few thoughts on this, but I will let you go ahead and get started.
Well, Nintendo's the reason, clearly, why it is we don't get Switch 2 updates for games. It's like, they're the reason why we're stuck getting games from the Switch 1 still running at 30 frames per second at low resolution on the Switch 2. It's because Nintendo just won't give people the dev kits. And I don't understand them. More and more, I'm really annoyed with Nintendo, and I've been much more of a willing to give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt over the years, even in even in recent years. I mean, the fact that I bought a Switch 2, that was part of me trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but just more and more, I just don't get them, and I really, really don't like what they're doing. Of course, the sad thing is that I know that there are still games that they're going to release that are going to be like, yeah, I'm going to get that day one. Metroid Prime 4 just got like its ESRB, rated with ESRB, which means that the release date reveal is imminent. It's coming soon for sure. And with this supposed thing we'll be talking about later regarding a big Nintendo event and potential Nintendo Direct, there's probably going to be like some Mario stuff released for the 40th anniversary. And it's just... But it still doesn't change the fact that I wish Nintendo just had a little more sense. It's like, you could easily make so much more money if you would just do Switch 2 dev kits. Because these devs, unless they program the games in such a way that the games actually take advantage of more powerful hardware, which theoretically they could do, even then it might not make a difference for a lot of these games. Like, I don't know how much of it would be an uncapped kind of issue, like where it just automatically is uncapped, and then as soon as you have stronger hardware, it will automatically just look and play better, versus it having to be baked into the software. But I don't know. I know that this might not technically be that big of a deal, but I just feel like the reason that, we could get so much more out of some of these Switch 1 games on the Switch 2 if Nintendo would just provide developer kits to more developers. And it's great that they've at least done a mix of both AAA and indie developers, but they really just need to, get them to everybody who wants them, because that's more games, which means more money for them and more money for the developers. But whatever. It is what it is. I'm just annoyed with Nintendo more and more, and I am very much at a point where there's probably going to be a lot fewer game purchases from me this generation than there was last generation. Of course, last generation I bought a ton of games on the Switch 1. I have probably like 100 games on the Switch 1, between digital and physical, and now I'm just like, I haven't been motivated to buy any Switch 2 games apart from the one that came with the system. Because especially because of the game key card thing, but yeah, there's no benefit with most of these games because they aren't any better than they were on Switch 1, and most of them, if there's a physical version, it doesn't even include the game on the cartridge. So Anyway, I'm not gonna ramble about this anymore. Go ahead, give it to me.
Well, I guess on one hand, this makes things, it makes a whole lot of sense now as to why some games are running the way they are. For one thing, perhaps like Elden Ring could be an example of why the
Well,
game.
no, because Elden
I
Ring they
mean,
definitely have a development kit. Because remember they're making
yeah,
Dust Bloods
that's true.
for the Switch
That's
2,
true.
and obviously if
True.
it's coming to Switch 2, then
Yeah.
yeah.
I was trying to throw them a bone here, but
Well,
okay,
you
yeah.
know how
So
FromSoft
yeah,
is
I
with
guess.
some of their releases at launch. You know they're
Well, that is also true.
in
That is
in
also
in a
true.
bad state.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll at least fix Elden Ring, because 15 frames per second out in the open world, that's not good.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah. Although I did also think about another thing is game is, for example, what was it again? Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero. Like
Mhm.
the frame rate from that game just did not look that well, and there was some pixelation here and there. And maybe it could be the fact that Bandai Namco hasn't received a dev kit, that they could be one of the companies as well. I don't know, but I'm hoping
I don't
that's the
think so.
reason why. If the Switch 2 version does not look that much better than the Switch 1 version, and I think it's also capped at 30 frames per second, which is like, why? How?
Well, I don't think Bandai Namco would be one of them, because I think that basically if the if developers releasing a Switch 2 version of the game, it's because they have a Switch 2 dev kit. And from the sounds of it, if they don't have a
Okay.
Switch 2 dev kit, they can only release a Switch version, but it will be playable through backwards compatibility.
Okay. Now I understand. Now I understand. Okay, then that's just another game that just isn't running well then. All right. Yeah. Well, in that case, it yeah, it really just stinks then that they really aren't getting these things out to people, which just doesn't make sense. Because you would want people to. It's just gonna make you. It's gonna be a poor reflection on you. If the games come out and they just don't look that well on the Switch, or they don't run as well because you're just essentially using backwards compatibility to run a Switch version. People are just gonna say, well, why should I get a Switch 2 at all if the games run pretty much the same? Or why should I get a Switch 2 if the games just don't run well at all? When
I think you overestimate the average person who buys a Switch.
well, I mean, for a larger, wider consumer audience, someone who might say, I don't know, like a PS5 centric gamer who would say, well, why would I want to get a Switch
Right.
2
Yeah.
if the games just don't run well, I can just play them right on my PS5,
E-
even if it
well,
is
even
portable.
even then, I think you're overestimating the average PS5 player. And I want to be clear. I'm not throwing shade at every single person who plays on PlayStation or Nintendo, because there's plenty of people who are rational and reasonable, and they will legitimately, like, they'll call out these companies when they do bad things. But there's also a lot of them that are just console fanboys, and they will accept whatever slop they're given. And then they'll continue to get slop, and they'll wonder why. Or they'll just lick it up and be like, "That was delicious. Thank you. I'll have some more." You know, uh, don't question product. Just be excited for next. What's the phrase? Um,
Don't ask questions, just consume product, and then be excited,
for next
product.
product. Yep, that's exactly what it is for a lot of people. And I do believe that a lot of people, it's really not necessarily that they want to be that way. It's just that they've accepted their fate, and they've just decided, I'm not going to fight it anymore because it makes me happy if I just put it out of my mind, the obvious thing that I should be annoyed about, that I should push back on. But I don't know.
And
Anyway,
it
keep
just
going.
still baffles my mind though that Nintendo is just not doing it. And part of me is wondering if the reason why they're limiting dev kits could be because they're trying to prevent them from floating out in the wild.
Mm.
And so that way, like, people might try to, like,
make a Switch
do
2
some
emulator.
like do some reverse engineering. It's like, maybe we can start working on Ryujinx 2 or Yuzu 2 or something like that. So that could be a reason why, but still, when there are people who are, potential, people who are interested in getting, especially for, and I definitely agree with you. That's good that there is a mix of both indies and AAA devs, but for people who, if you want like these bigger AAA games on your platform, you're gonna want to provide these companies with the tools necessary so that they have a desire to really, or at least they have what they need, so they want to actually do that. And otherwise they'll just be frustrated saying, well, we have to create a version for the weakest version of the game possible, for the weakest system possible, and then just try to sort of brute force it to work on the more powerful version, rather than just saying, hey, we can start off with a clean slate, or just maybe just skipping the Switch version altogether, just do Switch 2 only. So it definitely just doesn't make sense there, and I'm hoping that, for the consumer's sake, Nintendo can wake up from their delusion and just say, all right, we're going, for anyone who wants to, get a dev kit. And I mean, it's also 3 months afterwards, so it's not like they're trying to, save some leaks from coming out. Like the console's already out, so it's not like they're gonna save something like, oh, we don't want to leak out the specs or anything like that. It's right here. So why 3 months later, after the console's already come out, do these people still not have dev kits? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've got.
Yeah. I mean, I want to believe that Nintendo can somehow turn this around, but I have a feeling that there's just too much arrogance with this company to actually ever get to a point where they will start to do things better, that are more pro-consumer. And I know that the development kit thing is not necessarily a consumer issue, but it would still help, because then more games could potentially receive patches to where they could actually run better on the Switch 2. I mean, of course, I know what Nintendo really wants is they want people to just pay for upgrade fees and everything else, and, bring in extra money for stuff that should be free. But, it is what it is. All right. Well, rather than continuing to rant on that topic, let's move on into the next one. So there is another not surprising rumor that there is a Nintendo Direct coming up September. The date floating around is September 12th. We're not going to go into trying to do predictions on this, because we already exhausted our ridiculous number of predictions for that last Direct before it was officially, before it actually happened. And we were both almost entirely wrong about basically just about every prediction we made. I got one correct and you got one correct, and that was it. And we had a whole lot of stuff thrown at the wall that was not even close to correct. And I don't expect much out of this. I mean, we'll probably get the Metroid Prime release date finally, since they did, since it has been rated by the ESRB. And, I think there'll probably be some 40th anniversary stuff for Mario, and that they'll just kind of expand on that later on, because Charles Martinet put out a post on, I believe, his Instagram, and initially said that there was that he was going to be, he said, I'm very happy to be invited to the Tokyo Nintendo Direct this October 4th and 5th. And then he later edited his post and changed it to the Tokyo Nintendo Live this October 4th and 5th. Some people have speculated, of course, that it was more like he put Nintendo Direct and he wasn't supposed to, and accidentally revealed the date. But others, I think more correctly, have have speculated that it's more likely that he put down Nintendo Direct and he meant Nintendo Live, because Nintendo Directs are usually 1 day, not 2 days. So it seems very likely, based on this, that this is probably going to be, you'll have some sort of Nintendo Direct in September, and then October they'll have the Nintendo Live thing after celebrating Mario's 40th anniversary, and obviously Charles Martinet having voiced Mario for the majority of the time that Mario has been voiced, makes perfect sense to have him involved with that, especially for such a big celebration. So, any thoughts on these things?
Yeah, I think it's definitely great that he was invited to attend. I mean, he is the voice of Mario, and it's definitely, you know, a bit sad knowing that the last game he voiced was going to be his last one, since he's retiring from voicing the character. And, you know, he is just the definitive voice of Mario, like, plain and simple. And he's done such a great job, and the fact that he's the only voice that has been cast to voice Mario in a game. I mean, of course, outside of stuff like the CDI games from
no, Super Mario Wonder actually had someone different cast.
Oh, okay.
The most recent Mario game they did.
Okay,
but he did the rest.
All right. Well, then I guess outside of that, then he has been the only voice, and it's also, you know, I guess to a degree sort of like noteworthy because of that, the fact that, you know, it's not like there was a Japanese voice actor, because I mean, of course, you know, with a lot of games, they'll have, even, you know, they have an English voice actor, they'll, you know, might have a Japanese voice actor, but the fact that you only have an English one shows how much that the devs and, you know, design team really wanted to have him only. And it's really rare that you have a Japanese game have one voice. Devil May Cry games are pretty much English only, I believe. There's no Japanese version. Same with Bayonetta. Like they were like, the idea was to have like an English voice actors. And also with the Souls games, they're English only. There is no Japanese version. Like if you play the game in Japanese, it's only in Japanese subtitles.
Okay.
Because they had that mindset of, we want to have this game authentic for like a Western, you know, medieval fantasy style. So we want to have actual voices that reflect that. So I think that's kind of cool. So if a Japanese developer team want to have like an English voice actor, that's because they have that pure goal in mind, and it's just great. And I mean, the fact that also Japanese people, they really love their voice actors over there, or I guess seiyus, as they call them. So, you know, the fact that we have a Western seiyu, you know, receiving that much acclaim is just great. It really shows it. I mean, the fact that they also have, I believe what it says here on the post, like a meet and greet. So I mean, I'm assuming, of course, they might have like a translator there to for fans to come and talk to him. But you know, that's just amazing. I think so. It's great that he's getting this type of recognition for all the work he's done throughout the years, and there's no one who's really gonna be top him. I mean, I might be a little bit biased, but I don't think anyone's really gonna be able to top what he's done and, you know, everything he's contributed. I mean, sure, you know, throughout the generations, everyone has their own sort of like childhood experience, but he's really one that has gone through multiple generations. I mean, if you're someone who grew up playing Nintendo back in the 90s with the N64, you knew his voice then. If you grew up within like the Wii era, you knew his voice then. If you grew up in the Switch era, you knew his voice then. So you've heard his voice across multiple gaming generations, and it's really just a legacy that I do not think can be succeeded. It's not something that can be topped at all. So it's definitely it's definitely gonna be hard to beat there. So it's great that he's being brought in, especially for this 40th anniversary. I think that's also great having such a major milestone to have him brought in. And hopefully they do the same thing for the 50th anniversary. Hopefully, he'll still be around. But I think it's just definitely great that he's getting this recognition after everything he's done throughout the years, and it's nice.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think we can probably start to call it there. Maybe save that last topic for next week. But yeah, let's go ahead and start closing out for the night. So starting off with our recommendations and dissuasions. Go ahead.
All right, my recommendation is if you are using if you have a recipe that requires a softened cream cheese and it's something that you have to stir by hand, I recommend using whipped cream cheese just because it's a whole lot easier to blend in. When I've making the crab dip in the past, I have used regular solid blocks of cream cheese, but it's definitely, even with letting it sit out for about half an hour or so, it still can be a bit it can be a bit wearisome having to blend in 6 blocks of cheese together with everything else, and hard to get everything properly blended. So this past time I thought, hey, let me try using whipped cream cheese. That made a big difference. It didn't impact the flavor or anything like that, but it just helped making stirring everything together so much easier. So I definitely recommend that if you have any types of dips or anything that just requires it by hand. If you're using like a blender or a mixer or something like that, you'll be fine with using solid blocks. But if you have to use it by hand, then just use the whipped cream cheese.
You can also just unwrap it, stick it in the microwave to soften a bit. Some microwaves have a setting to soften it, and then otherwise you can do it like 30 seconds at a time, and that softens it pretty well. I've done that quite a bit, and that helps a lot for getting it softened. So, but either way, good recommendation. Well, my recommendation is if you want to play the Tomb Raider remaster, at least on PC, I don't know for sure how it is on console. Make sure the controls are set to modern controls before starting, unless you are either familiar with the classic controls, you want to experience them for some reason, or you're a masochist. Which I'm not, none of those things. So I should have checked it beforehand, but I just assumed that because it was a remaster that it would by default do the modern controls, but nope, it didn't. And I don't know if that's the case on consoles or not. I would hope it's not, but I honestly have no idea. So that's my recommendation. And
nice.
your dissuasion or dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be: do not play the new Daemon X Machina game on the Steam Deck if you choose to get the game. While it runs well in the main hangar and actually within the very starting mission, once you reach the open world, that's when it just becomes very inconsistent to the point where it's just not a fun experience. Also, I should also mention that when I was playing the game on PC, I was recording the entire time, so I need to go back and check and see if OBS or not using OBS will impact the open world performance later on. But I just know that when handheld, it's just not that great. And also, I guess just in general, if you didn't enjoy Daemon X Machina, you probably won't enjoy the sequel, so I probably would dissuade you from playing this right now. But of course, you can try the demo and see if it actually changes your mind. That's all I got.
All right. I did think of what I was going to mention earlier with when you talked about Daemon X Machina, and that is just, if it runs that poorly on Steam Deck, I wonder how poorly it's going to run on the Switch too. And the base, I think it's on the base Switch as well. So, I mean, I guess base Switch it would probably be locked to 30 frames per second, or potentially lower. Actually, wouldn't surprise me if it's locked to 30 on the Switch 2 as well, which would be really sad. Probably look better and then run the same. But who knows? Maybe they'll do some type of magic. As for my dissuasion, do not try to play an action game while walking on a treadmill, or type. I tried doing that earlier today while I was working. I was trying to see if I could type on my keyboard while walking on the treadmill, and it wasn't working very well. Maybe with some practice I could make it work, but I'm not quite there yet. I don't have that level of coordination, and yeah, I'll save it for when I'm not doing something that requires typing. So, yeah. The other thing is, do not buy Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater right now. Wait until they fix the issues with the game, because it will be a much better experience if you wait, most likely. There's a good chance you'll end up with a game that actually has a solid 60 frames per second like it should, even on consoles, and hopefully on PC as well. It will be in a better state, because right now it is not where it should be. So do not buy that right now.
Very, very, very good dissuasion there.
All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content this week. I still have to finish watching the rest of Spider-Man the Animated Series for my revised, I guess, review. I'm down to the last season now, so I just have to watch that, and I'll be ready to start working on that. There's one other thing I have in my mind as far as content, but that'll be something I put out later. And, well, and then a couple other projects, but those will be much later. But yeah, that's everything that I have thus far.
Good stuff. All right, well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. I still have that Why I Love PC Gaming video is up. It's actually doing reasonably well. I mean, nowhere near as well as like my comparisons, but you know, for a commentary video, especially how long it is, it's actually doing pretty well so far. I'm pretty pleased with it. Hopefully it'll continue to pick up momentum on that front. Depending on what kind of time I have on Saturday, I may or may not get the video split up into segments. Theoretically, it shouldn't take that long, but because of the fact that I need to get that thing done for episode 100 next week, that takes priority. So, we'll kind of see, and we'll have to play it by ear on whether we do the podcast on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. We can still aim for Tuesday, but it's really going to depend on what I get done this weekend because of how busy it's going to be. My hope is that I can finish up that thing for episode 100 over the weekend, and then that way, when Tuesday rolls around, we'll be ready to go with that new surprise that we have for listeners. So, listeners and viewers. So there's that. Apart from that, I mean, there's other things that are at least in the works, but I know I'm not going to get to them this weekend. I'm just not going to have the time for it. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. I imagine probably with the next couple weeks I'll have something else new up, one of my next PC videos, but right now it's just not as high priority as some of the other stuff, and I think it's much more likely that I'll get up the segments of that Why I Love PC Gaming video up before I get to actually doing any of the additional topics that I want to do. So there's that. There's, of course, the YouTube channel for YouTube and Rumble channels for the podcast, for the video version. which goes live every Friday, 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any technical issues. And that is on YouTube. It's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but it is up there as well. And then it's also the audio-only version is available on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, and some others that I can't think of off the top of my head. But that goes live every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time, barring any technical issues on that front. So if you don't want to see our beautiful faces or watch any clips of the games we've been playing, then just check out the audio version. That's a very convenient way to consume it. So there's that. Next week is episode 100. We've made it this far. 102 weeks in a row at that point. But 100 weeks in a row of putting out the podcast. And it's pretty cool. Definitely, this is the longest running podcast I've been a part of. Not slowing down in terms of the desire to keep up with it. It's been a great time. I've been enjoying the whole process, even in the times when I make dumb audio mistakes or editing mistakes in general and end up having to re-upload because I screwed something up. But hopefully that won't be a consistent thing and it'll just be a once in a while thing. Or better yet, hopefully it'll never happen again, but I have a realistic perspective on that. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, I think that's everything, really. I mean, you can contact us, send us an email through the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com or at the orangeboxpod on X/Twitter. If you want to either send us a direct message or send or just tweet at us, I guess you can do either of those. And then, of course, you can comment on the video versions, either video version of the podcast, and we'll respond or read your stuff on the show, whatever happens. But since we already talk typically for 2.5 hours every week or more, it's not like we're short on the amount of content we have. So that is everything. So, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, I blow my nose at you, so-called Arthur King. You and all your silly Gotham kniggets. Orange Box Podcast out.